In a hidden corner among the thick trees, a woman patiently awaits the arrival of her target. In the distance, a plane touches down at an airport. When it finally comes to a stop, its doors open and a couple steps out. At that precise moment, the woman raises her weapon, aims at the man, and pulls the trigger, having completed her task. He is a former U.S. Marine, a private contractor who, although he has been retired for 4 years, still takes on sporadic jobs when called. One morning, the ex-Marine receives a message requesting him to report to the Marine Corps base. Upon arrival, he meets a woman named Bartolomeo, who begins to review his history. This man, known as Levi, is an elite sniper with 113 confirmed kills and 81 probable. However, it is rumored that the actual numbers are much higher. His skill is exceptional, he does not use illegal substances, and he refuses to take any medication that could affect his accuracy. Additionally, he has no partner or anyone who would mourn his absence. But his life is about to take an unexpected turn when he is offered a new mission in Lithuania. Meanwhile, Drasa, the woman who was waiting at the beginning, is in a cemetery with her father, where she places a flower on her mother's grave. Drasa is an exceptional sniper and has received a new mission. She must remain undercover for at least a year, maybe more. This news is not encouraging, as her father is suffering from cancer, a disease that is slowly consuming him. However, he reveals to his daughter that on February 14th, Valentine's Day, everything will change. Drasa tries to make him reconsider his decision, but her father has already made up his mind. In September, Levi is on a plane. A soldier approaches him and warns that in 3 minutes they will arrive at a restricted area, meaning they cannot proceed further. Upon landing, he will have to travel 38 kilometers north, where he will be expected the next day. After equipping himself with his parachute, Levi jumps and lands in a completely unknown place, walking for hours until he reaches the meeting point. There he meets Jasper de Drake, known as JD. He has been there for a year and, like Levi, has no idea where they are. Additionally, Levi is the first person JD has spoken to in all that time, as his mission is to relieve him. JD takes Levi to the West Observation Tower, which will be his home for the next year. In the distance, the East Tower can be seen, with which any contact is prohibited. There are also mines and deadly barriers surrounding the abyss to the north and south. JD assures Levi that the East Tower will not be a problem as long as he does his job. They will do the same. In theory, the task is simple. Each day, Levi must patrol the shore, where there are towers approximately every 600 meters. He will need to reload ammunition, check the barriers, camouflage, and suspended mines. Every 30 days, Levi must send a report via radio. The camouflage consists of satellite transmitters scattered along the shore, each with its own power source and emergency generator. Their function is to send false signals to the satellites flying over the area, preventing them from detecting it. But that's not all. The real mission is not just to keep the place a secret, but to prevent whatever is inside the abyss from getting out. The subject activates a bomb and throws it into the abyss. After the explosion, a heart-wrenching scream echoes from the depths, confirming that this is no ordinary mission. JD explains that they refer to them as the Empty Men. No one knows exactly what they are or why they are called that. One of their predecessors gave them that name long ago, and it has stuck. Otate believes the abyss is the entrance to hell and that they are patrolling the door. The next morning, JD says goodbye to Levi, and upon reaching the extraction zone, a helicopter quickly appears, relieved to leave that place. Levi provides his full name and password, only to be shot in the head. His body is tossed into the hallway as if it were nothing. Shortly after receiving a call informing him that the October rotation has been completed, Bartolomeo feels relieved. Meanwhile, Levi has adapted to his new routine, checking the system, inspecting the mines, and sending a monthly report. One day, while conducting an inspection in the tower, he stumbles upon an unexpected find. Behind a shelf, his predecessors have left messages written on the wall. On another occasion, while harvesting his crops, a strange noise catches his attention from the other side of the abyss. Intrigued, he climbs up the tower and, with binoculars, manages to distinguish the guard from the other tower, who turns out to be Drasa. The loneliness becomes overwhelming, and one night, Drasa decides to break the rules. She writes a message on a piece of paper and throws it into the air to catch Levi's attention. He, in response, does the same, reminding her that they are not allowed to communicate. However, since it's her birthday, Drasa decides to do as she pleases. Levi, for his part, opts to toast while Drasa plays music loudly. Together, they have fun testing their aim. Everything seems to be going well until Drasa suddenly realizes something and stops the music. She signals Levi to check. Although he sees nothing at first glance, when he uses the scope of his weapon, he encounters a terrifying sight: the empty men, deformed humans with roots growing from their bodies. Without thinking, he fires, causing an explosion. Realizing that several of them are trying to climb the abyss, Drasa is forced to help him. However, she doesn't notice that there are also empty men climbing on her side until one gets close enough, forcing her to draw her gun and shoot. But this is just the beginning. One of the empty men falls onto a mine, causing a second explosion that wounds Drasa in the chest. Additionally, a new wave of empty men begins to climb. There are so many that the mini turrets activate and open fire to stop them. Drasa does what she can, but her injury is severe, and she ends up fainting. At dawn, she regains consciousness and tends to her wounds. Later, Levi checks the mines while she covers him. In an unexpected turn, a drone emerges from the abyss and stops for a moment in front of him before flying away. With Christmas approaching, Levi decides to set up a tree and wish Drasa a Merry Christmas. From that moment on, they begin to interact more often, making snowmen and playing chess. Surprisingly, they develop a close relationship, finding comfort and companionship amid the loneliness and dangers surrounding them. When February 14th arrives, Drasa feels overwhelmed with sadness over the loss of her father. Levi, seeing her from a distance, approaches and asks what's wrong. She confesses that it has been a tough day and that she wishes she could be with him. Remembering a phrase written on the wall by their predecessors, which says that only those who dare to go far discover how far they can go, Levi decides to make Drasa's wishes come true. He takes a missile from his arsenal and modifies it, replacing the explosive with a rope. Then he fires it, and Drasa secures the rope to a tree. After shaving and picking some flowers, Levi puts on a harness and begins to cross the abyss. Upon reaching the other side, he comes face to face with Drasa for the first time. Later, they both enjoy an outdoor meal while discussing their location. Levi is convinced they must be somewhere in the northern hemisphere because of the seasons. Seizing the moment, he admits he has a better view from there, sitting across from Drasa. However, besides wanting to seduce her, he also wonders about the truth behind the empty men. As night falls, Drasa plays music and provocatively convinces Levi to dance with her. The moment culminates in a kiss, and they lie down together. While stargazing, Levi reveals that he writes poetry and has composed a poem about Drasa titled Side. She is delighted to hear this. The next morning, they say goodbye with a kiss. Everything seems to be going wonderfully, but nothing lasts forever. As Levi crosses the abyss, a sudden explosion cuts the rope and sends him plummeting directly into the abyss. Seeing this, Drasa rushes to gear up and, without a second thought, jumps in search of Levi. Below, everything is shrouded in a yellowish fog, and Drasa is unfortunate enough to land in a river. Levi, trapped among the branches of a tree, appears to be unscathed, though not for long. Just as a giant centipede-like creature prepares to attack him, Levi regains consciousness and, in an act of bravery, shoots it. The shot causes Levi to fall onto a red, sticky substance found among the tree roots. The substance begins to wrap around him, and although Levi tries to resist, he can't free himself until Drasa arrives and shoots, managing to rescue him. With adrenaline pumping, they decide to head towards the eastern wall in search of the cable that will get them out of there. However, the centipede and the strange substance aren't the only things waiting for them. Suddenly, empty men on horseback emerge from nowhere and attack. Levi and Drasa fight with determination and manage to take them down, but one of the attackers escapes. The situation becomes even more complicated when they realize they have lost the elevator, meaning they will have to climb 500 meters up. However, something strange catches their attention: the empty men are wearing military uniforms from the 1940s. With no answers in sight, they continue on their way until the fog changes color, shifting from yellowish to an unsettling violet. At that moment, they find themselves surrounded by inert empty men, tied to the branches of the trees. Further on, they come across an abandoned village with an opening in the ground. Hearing a noise, they decide to enter a church where they discover human skeletons. Next to one of them, they find cyanide, suggesting that they made the tragic decision to end their lives. Meanwhile, spiders descend from the ceiling, and more empty men arrive from outside. With the help of their weapons, Levi and Drasa manage to escape the church and head towards the wall of the abyss. There, they find a door that allows them to enter. Everything is shrouded in darkness, but with their flashlights, they manage to reach an abandoned laboratory. Inside, they discover an emergency generator that, fortunately, still works. Then, they find a tape and put it in a player. The recording, made on July 12 or 13, 1946, reveals a woman explaining how her community was formed as part of a secret coalition between Eastern and Western countries at the end of World War II. While Robert Oppenheimer was developing the atomic bomb in Los Alamos, they were working on equally destructive biochemical missiles. 6 days before the recording, an 8.1 magnitude earthquake affected their location, severely damaging the facilities. They worked tirelessly to prevent the toxin from escaping. Contact with the biochemical fused the DNA of biological entities within the abyss, mixing human DNA with plants, animals, and even insects. Some people turned out to be more resistant to contamination, especially if exposure was for hours rather than days. However, within 5 days, mutations began to manifest physically. Their strategic decision to choose such an isolated location was the only factor that could save the rest of humanity. Among the items in the laboratory, they also find a computer belonging to Dark Lake, a company specializing in genetic research. Upon investigating, they discover that their drones have been collecting hybrid DNA samples to create super soldiers. At that moment, they realize they are not working for the military, as they had believed, but for Dark Lake. After watching the recording, Levi and Drasa understand that they must find an exit soon to avoid prolonged exposure to the toxin. However, Drasa realizes that her backpack, where she kept all the ammunition, is no longer where she left it. She finds it outside the laboratory and stealthily approaches to retrieve it. But the moment Drasa grabs it, an empty man on horseback drags her away. Drasa fights with all her strength to free herself, but her head hits a tree, leaving her unconscious. When she wakes up, she finds herself tied up and facing the empty man. However, she is not willing to give up. With all her strength, she kicks him and manages to free herself from the ceiling where she was suspended. They both start to fight, but the creature is stronger. Drasa dodges its attacks and uses fire to burn the roots covering it until Levi appears and shoots it. At that moment, they discover that this empty man is actually the first soldier from the West Tower, the same one who named the empty men. Levi also realizes that they are in a missile silo. Some time ago, the earthquake damaged the missiles, causing them to start leaking, and now the contaminant is in the mist. As they try to escape, both must navigate through a large, slimy creature that is inert but still alive, being careful not to touch it to avoid waking it up. However, Drasa accidentally steps on one of its limbs, causing the creature to attack them. Fortunately, they manage to fight their way through and, in the end, throw an explosive that sets the creature ablaze. They then reach a garage where they discover several jeeps. These are still operational and have powerful winches that could serve as an elevator. Determined, Drasa speeds east in search of the cable and eventually finds it. They quickly attach it to the jeep and begin to ascend. Soon, they manage to rise above the fog, but suddenly they stop climbing. The empty men have started to climb the rope. Levi and Drasa fight against them, but there are so many that Levi uses fuel to set them on fire. This way, they manage to free themselves from their attackers and reach the top. At the tower, they bandage their wounds and agree to quarantine for 5 days to ensure they haven't been infected. The next day, Levi returns to his tower and contacts to present his monthly report. The drones have alerted Bartolomeo about the activity in the abyss, leading to the question of whether Levi has descended. He denies it, but Bartolomeo asks him to eliminate his counterpart from the other tower, as she was the one who descended. Upon receiving the order, Levi decides to lie and agrees. The communication between them continues until one day, a helicopter approaches. They immediately realize that something is wrong and decide to flee separately. Bartolomeo, who doesn't trust them, has come to end their lives. He deploys drones that quickly locate them and begin to fire. However, Levi and Drasa manage to take them out. They head to higher ground, where they prepare their rifles and aim at the towers where Bartolomeo is located. At that moment, Drasa discovers a note written on the wall by Levi that says, "There are 3 things that cannot be hidden for long: the sun, the moon, and the truth." At that moment, Levi and Drasa shoot at the satellites, destroying their camouflage and exposing the abyss. Drasa manages to get to safety while Bartolomeo and his team flee in a helicopter. Although the explosion reaches them, Levi, injured, tries to get as far away as possible, but not far enough, and the explosion sends him tumbling down a waterfall. Over time, Drasa finds herself in France. Even though she has held on to the hope that Levi survived, time has passed, and she decides to open the letter he left her in case he didn't make it. Inside, she finds the poem he had written for her. It's April, and Drasa is working as a waitress in a restaurant when, to her surprise, she sees Levi sitting at a table. They approach each other, exchange a few words, and finally, they kiss.